Hey, this is Matt once again. What about to the video is another paid request for Bronson. Thank you so much for that. He sent a pretty generous amount for me to do a couple top 10 lists, so thank you once again, man. And for those interested in requesting pretty much any type of videos, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. Now, this time he wanted to hear my top 10 favorite Jackie Chan films. And I'm not going to get into the guy personally, because I'm not a fan of the guy personally. Again, this is a guy that, took his little boy and fucking threw him against the room one day because he was pissed and all this other shit, but don't respect him as a person, but I do like some of his movies. Number 10, Shanghai Noon. It's one of his American films, but I liked seeing the way he worked in the Wild West. I don't mind Owen Wilson. I like the way Jackie used like the horseshoe and all these other weapons of that time. The saloon bar fight. How he's using his skills in order to deal with the bad guys, but in this different setting. Same with fighting Native Americans with the hatchets and stuff. Thought the choreography was pretty fun. You could argue the choreography in this is probably a bit more spot on than, say, Rush Hour or some of the other movies, but it was also cool to see some people like Lucy Liu. I always forget that she's in the film. I like some of the usage of the songs, like Kid Rock, Cowboy. I remember this being advertised, and that looks like a fun film. The thing came out in 2000. I didn't get to see it in the theater, but got the DVD, and yeah, that's it. Had a good time with it. I don't mind the sequel, but I think the first one is better. Number 9, I put Skip Trace, a newer film directed by Rennie Harlan, who I'm a big fan of Cliffhanger, Die Hard 2, Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, Mindhunters, Deep Blue Sea, among others. He got the directors Jackie Chan and Johnny Knoxville. I thought, like, compared to a lot of the later Jackie Chan films, this one had a bit of that spark to it. Maybe because Rennie Harlan, they were shooting a lot of cool-looking locations. Maybe because he had a little bit of old Jackie... I mean, he's slower in his old age, of course, but he still had a bit that spark of doing these stunts like of old. And I thought him and Johnny Knoxville actually worked well together, since Knoxville himself is also into stunts, different types of stunts. And it's not a flawless film, but this is a film that I had no high hopes for. I'm like, you know what, this is actually pretty decent. Actually a pretty fun movie, Skip Trace. So, a bit underrated in my opinion. Because no one ever... It came and went, and nobody said anything, but I thought, yeah. Rennie Harlan, I thought, helped give it a bit of that extra spark compared to other Jackie Chan films, especially of that time. Number 8, the first Rush Hour. I remember that being a big deal to me because that was the time I was really following those two guys' careers. Chris Tucker, I was really following because I saw Friday and Money Talks and The Fifth Element, and I'm like, oh man, this guy's going to be the new Eddie Murphy. What's he going to do next? Same with Jackie Chan. Oh man, I really like Rumble in the Bronx and Super Cop, and so, oh my god, action guy and comedy guy, and they're doing Rush Hour. And at the time, no one knew this film was going to do anything. Because I remember having cable, and there's some kind of thing where they're talking about all the movies that come out this summer, and they're not, they're really propping up all these other films, like Lethal Weapon 4 and all these other movies. And then Rush Hour gets like a little brief bit, and they move along. But then lo and behold, Rush Hour became one of the big surprise hits of that year, especially of that summer. And, created a franchise with 3 movies and a TV show that didn't last too long. And now everyone knows Rush Hour. And I like the first one. Second was my favorite, which I'll get to that later, but yeah, I like the first Rush Hour. I think Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan have great chemistry. Doesn't have much of the I mean, the action's fine. I do think it will get better in the second one. But it definitely has some very funny bits of comedy in there. Number 7, I put Mr. Nice Guy. That's a film that was released by New Line Cinema where it was between them and another company just trying to get whatever Jackie Chan films they could. And Mr. Nice Guy, I remember it being advertised. Yeah, that song, Semi-Charmed Kind of Life. Semi-Charmed Kind of Life. And I thought it had some, the plot is pretty, basic. Jackie Chan is a chef. He just mixed up in shenanigans. It's not his fault. He's pulled into this videotape that the bad guys want, and it's really just there to serve some pretty entertaining, well done stunt sequences. Him avoiding buses by having to put his hands on it so he don't topple over. This construction site where he's avoiding saws and saw blades and all this stuff during this construction sequence. And the fight and stunt sequence is definitely well done because you got Sammo Hung directing the film. And he has a small part as this bicycle riding guy that during this one scene just gets in worse and worse situations and seems to have the worst of luck. So it's cool that Sammo Hung directed the film. Then you also have Richard Norton. He's pretty much your main villain in the movie, who has worked with Jackie Chan before. I want to say it was City Hunter. So it's always nice to see Richard Norton there. Richard Norton is a martial artist. He's done a lot of other stuff. He was in China O'Brien with Cynthia Rothrock. He had a big role in some Chuck Norris films, including, I want to say, The Octagon. He had a big role in that. I think one or two other early Chuck Norris films. But yeah, Mr. Nice Guy I always thought was a fun movie that no one really talked about. So I do find it a bit underrated because of that. Number 6, Jackie Chan's First Strike, also known as Police Story 4. Yeah, you watch the trailer, you really get the idea this is trying to be a little bit of Jackie Chan mixed in with James Bond, the striking locations, and really cool trailer. I would say one of the better trailers for a Jackie Chan film. This time, he's fighting for America. I think that was a trailer. I think it's Optimus Prime himself voicing the trailer. How do I not remember his name? Come on. Peter. It's going to come to me later. The voice of Optimus Prime. There you go. But yeah, that one, you had some really, again, fun, crazy, like a good action sequence involving a ladder, a step ladder where he's opening, shutting, flipping through it to avoid the bad guys. There's close calls dealing with sharks. There's great stunt where he's snowboarding down the mountain and he jumps off and grabs on the helicopter. He's got to fall all the way down to the water below. A lot of very solid set pieces in that movie. And I would say the last good police story film, because I'm not a fan of new Police Story or Lockdown. I think those films suck. But the first 4 I like. Speaking of which, number 5, I put Police Story. The whole finale and the mall alone is worth the price to seeing it. So much broken glass, so much just brutal stunt work. Sliding down these lights, pretty much burn the shit out of himself. You really get to see Jati unleash in anger and frustration against these bad guys, which is rare to see because usually it's comedic for Jati. But I just wish the film had a dub with Jati's voice in it. Because, I mean, you can watch it, the Hong Kong version, but even that's not really Jati's voice. And then the English dub is definitely not Jati's voice. So I wish there was one that actually had Jati's voice. Because I can't help it. It's just one of those things that I know how Jackie Chan sounds, and when I don't hear it, it takes me out a little bit of the movie. But it's still great. Like I keep repeating, a lot of good stunt work in that, and fight scenes. Definitely inspire a lot of stuff. Tango and Cash, for example, the opening, where Stallone is shooting the truck and the people fly out of the windshield. Only in Jackie Chan's film, he's aiming, he shoots up, and then they stop because they're scared, and the force of it, they go out of the windshield. And also, there's the bike riding through the glass that was inspired for later on for Brandon Lee's film Rapid Fire, where Brandon Lee did pretty much the same thing. So it definitely inspired quite a bit of movies. I mean, hell, the whole bit where they're going down this whole hill of all these shacks where the bad guys are in, I guarantee if someone's inspired for that for the ending of Bad Boys 2. So, and you tell that Jackie had something to prove. This was right after he had done a film in America that I wasn't too happy with called The Protector. And so he tried to get that movie and re-edit it and film a couple stuff to make, I would say, a better version. But, people still weren't gung-ho, so he's like, fuck it, I'm going to make my own cop movie. And he did with Police Story, which got a successful franchise. Which leads to my number 4, Super Cop, also known as Police Story 3. One of the early Jackie Chan films I saw. Great support from people like Michelle Yeoh. Crazy stunt hanging off the helicopter as you go on across all the open landscape, crashes through billboards, having to land on trains. Just a bunch of crazy shit. One of those few times he actually uses guns. He's not really a gun guy. It's one of those times where he's using grenades, he's using guns to shoot and kill bad guys. It's fucking Super Cop. It's classic. So number 3, I put Rush Hour 2 because I think that's a funnier sequel. I think the fight scene's a bit more, better choreographed compared with the first one. I like the movie takes place overseas in Hong Kong. It's a bit more of a dynamic backdrop. And yeah, I think it's a sequel that did improve on the original. And I remember seeing that on DVD for the first time, just being very satisfied. Sadly, Rush Hour 3 was quite the opposite. It's not the worst sequel I've seen. I've seen so many worse sequels, but Rush Hour 3 is just so disappointing and not that funny, and except maybe one or two scenes I could laugh at, to be fair, but it's a very disappointing film. Rush Hour 2, though, I love it. Number 2, I put Operation Condor. Sometimes that could be number 1, my favorite Jackie. That one always appealed to me. The thing with that film was that overseas, you had a film called Armor of God. And then you had Armor of God 2, Operation Condor. But then in America, because of the success of films like Rumble in the Bronx, the studios are getting whatever Jackie Chan films they get their hands on. So for some reason they get the sequel first. But because the first film had not come out in the US, they just go, okay, this is Operation Condor. And then the first one is called Operation Condor 2, Armor of God in the US. So, I know. So, in overseas, it's Armor of God, Operation Condor. It's Armored God and Armored God 2 Operation Condor. In the US, it's Operation Condor 2 Armored God. The Operation Condor, listen, I like the Indiana Jones feel to it. I think what really pushes that up the list for me is the whole third act. When they're in the bunker and there's this missile that some bad guys are trying to get to, this armory, maybe some gold treasure as well. And how the whole thing is intricate with the close calls Jacky's getting and finding these guys. Like there's this one bit where this heavy metal thing's coming and he does this and it just could crush your head but just barely scrapes his nose. The whole wind tunnel scene where it's blowing and it's like Superman and flies and hits the bad guys. That always memorable to me. Even the bit much earlier on where he's on the motorcycle, he has to jump onto these rope with all these crates on it, has to grab onto it before it falls into the water. Just a lot of very dangerous stunts in that. And number one, I put Rumble in the Bronx. It was my introduction to Jackie Chan. Yes, it's a film where it takes place in New York, but if you look at the background, there's mountains. There ain't no mountains in New York because they filmed it in Canada. So, but yeah, it's a film that each time I watch it, it just reminds me of first finding out about this guy, enjoying his comedy, enjoying his action sequences, enjoying his fight scenes, whether it be the bit in the supermarket early on in the film. And it has the scene when I think of what Jackie Chan is in this movie is when he's at the gang members' hideout and how he's just using the refrigerators to fight the bad guys, the shopping cart, the shopping cart, using all this stuff, rolling over but flipping this thing to block this TV being thrown at him, slamming it shut, kicking his eye, it just avoiding all the pinball machines so he doesn't get his head crushed. That scene just, for me, epitomizes Jackie Chan and how he could take a whole setting, take a location, and just be creative with all the implements to be used throughout that sequence. So, I thought Stanley Tong did a pretty good job directing the film. Yeah, Rumble in the Bronx. Still enjoy that film to this day. And that was, I believe, a New Line Cinema flick. I remember hearing about it, and the big gimmick was, he has no stunt man. All the stunts are real. I'm like, what? So, I mean, by that point, I was probably 12, 13. So, as a guy that watched live action films when at that age, I'm like, wait, he's doing all this himself? Oh, wow. And that just made it even much more impressive. So, went to see the film. Actually, I would say probably saw it on VHS. Loved it. And like, what else has this guy done? And then it led to Super Cop, Jackie Chan's First Strike, and more and more. I know my mom was a fan of him as well. So anyway, that's my top 10 favorite Jackie Chan films. May not like the guy personally, but do like a lot of his work. So with that said, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.